You hear an interview with a nurse called Leanne Haydock, who's talking about the issues involved in caring for obese or plus-size patients. You now have 90 seconds to read questions 37 to 42.
Today I'm talking to Leanne Haydock, a nurse with a special interest in the care of obese or plus-size patients. This is a real issue, isn't it, Leanne?
It is. The number of people carrying extra weight's been on the increase for some time. Obesity now affects around 1 in 4 adults in many Western countries, and it's known to be associated with increased risk of health conditions including type 2 diabetes, heart disease and stroke. But we shouldn't forget that the reasons for this increase are complex and often very challenging to understand. So addressing the root causes of the issue isn't the job of health professionals on the front line. Our job is to offer optimal care for these patients. And this means moving away from treating them as the exception to the rule, towards making them an integral part of what we do. I'm committed to that idea, but making it happen is easier said than done. It means a major shift in both attitudes and policies.
So what sort of attitudes towards plus-size patients have you come across?
One issue they face is the very common misconception that they're somehow responsible for their size, that it's simply a lifestyle choice. Even amongst health professionals, you'll get comments like, if they just lose weight, there wouldn't be an issue. This is so unfair because the reasons for obesity are enormously varied and complex, and I find comments like this very disheartening. I can understand that it's human nature to judge other people, to wonder why someone's become so overweight, to feel that it was somehow avoidable, but none of that justifies offering this patient group anything but the best possible standards of care, and that's what we should be aiming for.
But treating them must involve adopting a different approach sometimes.
Yes, but we need to focus on finding the best flexible approach that works for all patients. Get away from the idea that the plus-size patient is unsuitable for the setup we have in place. For example, it's the bed that's not suitable, not the patient who's too big to fit the bed. The notion of an average-size patient lying on a bed that isn't large enough, or being expected to use a commode that's too small for them, would be rightly regarded as inappropriate and undignified care. Ensuring that plus-size patients have appropriate equipment and that everyone knows how to use it is crucial.
And specialised equipment is available?
It's not that the equipment doesn't exist. There are specialist versions of most things, from hoists to mobility aids to commodes. The problem is getting hold of these things in many hospitals. That's partly because traditionally it hasn't been a priority for funding, and policies haven't kept pace with changes in society. But there are other issues here too. What really causes headaches is where you can order, say, a large bed, but the doors, corridors and stairs aren't wide enough to get it to you. Many older hospitals weren't designed with the needs of plus-size people in mind. So even if you get the large bed in place, is there enough space for patients and staff to move around easily, and so on?
But clinicians have other concerns, especially around safety issues, don't they?
Well, yes. For nurses in particular, one major concern involves moving and manual handling. If a patient's carrying a lot of excess weight, then more staff may be needed, and there's a greater risk of somebody getting hurt. Turning a patient in bed, transferring to a chair, supporting a limb, all become much more complex and sometimes daunting if the patient is plus size. Clearly, what's needed is a risk assessment, and information sharing is central to that. Being able to map out the patient journey and anticipate needs helps us provide the best care. So, for a routine admission, nurses should know how the patient's going to arrive, where they're going to sit, etc., and not be suddenly confronted by someone whose needs can't be met.
And what about the human dimension?
Well, a key part of optimising care for these patients is avoiding assumptions about their capabilities. Nurses should have conversations with patients, ask how they normally handle specific tasks at home, and see if this can be adapted into the healthcare setting. As one patient put it, we know we're large. We might be living under some delusion about the extent of it or the damage that it may do to our long-term health, but we're not unaware. So although the subject needs to be handled with sensitivity, tact and dignity, it's relevant to care that it happens. And another important thing to remember is that the patient may feel worried on your behalf and be keen to work with you to reduce any risk.